Only 1 week to go before the opening ceremonies of the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing. Hello, I'm Mike Walter, sitting in for Anna Naidu, and this is The Heat. On February 4th, Beijing will become the only city to host both the Summer and Winter Olympics. Nearly 3,000 athletes will compete. These Olympics will feature more events and produce more gold medals than any previous Winter Games. On Thursday, the Olympic Village started receiving athletes from around the world. CGTN's Ning reports.
Athletes are arriving at Olympic Village in the snowy town of Taizicheng. This is the village's first day running. Some 300 athletes have come from a dozen countries, including the Netherlands, Norway, and Romania.
Oh, I feel confident. I feel super good. I'm ready to go, and hopefully I can put down my best result. So,
the Zhangjiakou Olympic Village is greeting athletes from around the world on the first day it opens. Even the weather is freezing here, the people here are giving them a warm welcome.
I think the whole thing is very good.
Really?
Yes, it's been very well done. It's all working, so I'm having a good time. The people have been fantastic, very, very friendly, lovely. I think it's going to work very well. I think I went to Tokyo, and I think some lessons have been learned and things have evolved better.
Volunteers and registered personnel also standing by to provide a helping hand.
I think it will be a really good place for the athletes to live. The situation, the whole situation is quite challenging, especially with the travel from Norway. But I think when everyone is here, it will be really good. So we are really looking forward to these games. The track is open today, so now they are out skiing.
More than 1,000 athletes will spend the next month living here and competing in the games.
That was Ning reporting. For many athletes, the dream is to get to the highest spot on the podium. Earlier, I spoke with Canadian figure skater Patrick Chan, who competed in 3 Winter Olympics and won silver and gold medals. And I started by asking him what it was like to win that gold medal.
I always say it feels like a huge relief of all this weight and all this hard work, all the pain and the frustration of training to that point, all gets released. And I just always loved just standing on the top of the podium, remembering about all the ups, but also all the lows that I had to go through to get to that point. Because, it's a long journey to go just to the Olympics, and then to stand on top of the podium is kind of like the icing on the cake.
Yeah, everybody remembers that moment, but you know all the moments that lead up to it. Talk to me about these Olympics, because I know you've competed in 3. What are your expectations for Beijing?
Well, these are very different Olympic Games than ever before. Luckily for these winter athletes, the Tokyo Games were a bit of a hint to what it will be like moving forward. So for these athletes, it'll be really interesting to see how the dynamic is. I'm curious about the energy, kind of the Olympic spirit. I wonder if we're going to lose a bit of that because of just less human one-to-one interactions. There's not much fan interaction. It's all very much controlled. So it may be a huge advantage for the athletes because it'll allow them to just stay really focused and not get distracted by all the fun of the Olympic Games. But then, unfortunately, I think it'll be a bit challenging to motivate themselves, maybe. But I think what I feel bad for these athletes is just not having the time after their event is over to just enjoy each other's company and meet new friends. And those are the biggest memories. The memories I cherish the most are the memories I've created with my friends, my Olympic teammates.
And what's great about Olympic sports is that it's a competition where it brings the world together. Can you talk about the inclusive nature of it and the fact that in many respects it does build bridges, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I think you can relate to going to the park and starting playing softball or playing football with a bunch of friends or playing tennis. It brings out this like competitive nature, and you almost forget about everything else that's going on in your life. You're just so focused on what's happening on the field of play. So for me, it's always been so. I've been so fortunate to be a part of that journey and part of that world of competitive high-level sport. But yet still maintaining really great relationships and friendships with some of these athletes.
And I know you've competed in Beijing in the past. You won a gold a few years back in a competition there. I know that you've also put on some clinics. So talk to me about your link to China and your feelings about the country.
Yeah, so my parents are from China, and they immigrated to Hong Kong at a very young age, and then came over to Canada. So I have roots in China, and it's really such a beautiful country, a country full of diversity and different environments. It's really a beautiful country, and it's my heritage. I've always had a kind of a connection to China, and I've always gone along with the Chinese athletes. And there's always, I felt a really healthy relationship with other Chinese athletes, and they've always been so supportive of my career as well. And I've been to China with my wife. We've had clinics there. We've taught a few seminars. And let me tell you, there's so many talented young skaters, and I think athletes in other sports as well. Just the work ethic is you can't compare. So I've always really enjoyed visiting China. Unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to go back in a while, but I'm looking forward to going back in the future.
Well, as long as you're talking about talented Chinese skaters, give us your assessment. What can we expect from the Chinese team this year?
Well, I think the event to watch for the Chinese skaters is the pair event. I think that's where we'll see the best results. And I think we've witnessed the Chinese pair teams, not just in the top one, but there's number 2 and number 3 are still up for contention for a medal. So it can be really interesting to see the defending world champions if they will come back and win Olympic gold. I know they've been striving for it, so I'm looking forward to watching the pair event. And then Boyang is in the men's event, who I've competed against before at the Olympics. I look forward to seeing how he will skate as well.
Patrick, so much of what you do as a skater is mental, and it's so precision-oriented. And I just want you already kind of touched on it, but I'd like maybe to dig just a little bit deeper about the pandemic. I mean, the mental aspect of this is such a big part of it, and then you've got the other mental aspect where you got to get tested and the quarantine and this and that. How is that going to impact these skaters, do you think?
Athletes, we are creatures of habit, so we like to keep things very orderly, and it's all about repetition and the same consistent schedule and routine. And unfortunately now that we've added more to that routine with all the testing and the extra measures. So I think it was for sure challenging, I would say, at the very beginning of the pandemic for the athletes, when a lot of unknowns, we didn't know what was happening with live sports, if it was still going to happen, what is training going to look like. However, now a year and a half later, 2 years, I think have learned to live with it. Whether an Olympic athlete or not, we've all learned to live with the pandemic and the new regulations. So I think at this point, we should be seeing these athletes feeling very confident, feeling very stable mentally, and then also feeling quite strong physically via training. So I don't see these athletes faltering at all and letting this pandemic affect them too much on the field. So we're meant to be to rise in occasions of adversity. And so this is going to be one of those moments where they're going to have to dig deep and just kind of really use their mental strength and their routine and the practice and the hours of repetition, just relying on that.
Talked about adversity. It's so interesting because you've hung up your skates. I'm wondering if there's some adversity moving from skater to spectator. I mean, is that a difficult challenge for you?
Absolutely. is the first time I'm watching the Olympics from home. So it is hard, and I've had the last 4 years has been a bit of a roller coaster ride of finding a new career, finding a new identity away from skating, and filled with doubts. I've been these last 2 years on top of with the pandemic. It's changed so many things. It's hard to feel stable and to feel rooted in my career, because I feel like I'm floating around a little bit right now. But I'm excited nonetheless to watch and cheer on my Canadian teammates at these games. And you know, it's not so bad to watch from the couch.
It's not. I've been doing it for years. You'll get used to it. One final question. I know you're still in love with this sport, still involved. So what does the future hold for you?
Yeah, the pandemic really changed the future of my career in skating. I would be normally, you know, since the last Olympics, I would have been touring around Canada, maybe a bit in Japan, doing skating shows, exhibitions. Unfortunately, those were all canceled. So I went ahead and kind of thought about a future career in real estate. So I'm now involved in working for a commercial real estate firm here in Vancouver, Canada. So that's kind of the horizon, but I'm always still going to be involved in skating, whether it's through our NSO, through Skate Canada, doing some equity, diversity, and inclusion work, or coaching seminars here and there. And I've actually shifted a bit of my skills that I've learned in figure skating into hockey. So I've been teaching a bit of power skating as well, which is a popular thing to do for figure skaters. But I'm a huge fan of hockey, so I just love to be a small part of it is special for me.
Still have a full plate moving from skating to selling. Best of luck to you, and thanks so much for chatting with us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
To continue our conversation about the Winter Olympics, let's bring in our panelist from Montreal, Canada. Dick Pound is a longtime member of the International Olympic Committee. From Beijing, Paul Dong is a sports and culture commentator for CGTN, and he was hired by the Beijing 2008 Summer Games Organizing Committee as an on-site official commentator. And Justin Downs is president of Access Leisure Management, and he is joining us from Beijing. Justin, I know you're up early for us. We appreciate that. You know, we're 1 week away. Give us a scene setter. What do these venues look like? What can we expect?
Oh, I mean, there's no question that it's a flurry of activity. I think the venues have been ready for a long, long time. The staff have been training, actually probably the best trained staff in the world. They've been training for 3 years nonstop for this. And so far from what I hear, because I'm outside of the closed loop at the moment, everything seems to be going very smoothly. Everybody's happy. The service is great. The environment is great. And the venues actually from an ice and snow standpoint seem to be holding up very well.
And Paul, earlier this week, President Xi met with the head of the International Olympic Committee. Let's listen to a little bit of what President Xi had to say.
I don't care much about the number of gold medals that Chinese athletes will win during this Winter Olympics, but I care more about the energy and vitality that the Games will inject into our nation. The Beijing Games will get 300 million people to participate in winter sports, and the popularity of winter sports is actually a boost to a sports power.
Paul, you know a little bit about this energy and vitality. I mean, this is the second go-round for you. It's the second go-round for Beijing. We have the Summer Games, now the Winter Olympics. Give me a sense of what the excitement level is like there.
Well, I think excitement is very, very high, but it's very, very different from most people's expectations they had for themselves just a couple of years ago. Definitely not when Beijing decided to bid for the Winter Games 7 years ago. But you know, people are adapting themselves to the ever-changing, fast-changing situation here, and we are still in the middle of this pandemic, which is very different from last year, but still, in the Chinese term, very complicated. But well, it's great to see that all the venues are ready and all the required facilities and preparations are almost 100% ready for the official operations of such a great event. I think you know, it's a little regret for the local people in Beijing and surrounding areas to buy tickets for themselves. I understand there are still a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine who wish that they had a chance to buy tickets and go to the venues that are closest to their own homes. But they are quite understanding now, and they are prepared to cheer in front of TV or online for not only their home athletes, but their the other athletes and participants from around the world that they are relatively less familiar than they are with the Summer Olympians.
Yeah, the pandemic, we've all taken it on the chin, and obviously Beijing would have liked a different look for all of this, but unfortunately with the pandemic, that's not to be the case. You heard President Xi say he doesn't really care about the medals, but as you know, you and I do, everybody else seems to. We watch these games, we're so excited by them. I asked Patrick Chan about, the Chinese skaters, but when we look at the Chinese athletes, which ones will you be keeping your eye on? What are some of the competitions that'll really attract your attention?
Mike, I think the situation here with Chinese real enthusiasm and their particular attentions while the games are going on, not only to the foreign athletes, but when it comes to the medal hopes or marvelous performances better than expected for the home athletes, I think the situation changes very fast. Just imagine once your country and your city has already hosted some of the biggest summer games back in 2008, I think social changes are taking place. People would look at the medal tally table very, very differently because they've been that high. They've been, even exceeding the best in the world, like the United States, both in Beijing and then in Tokyo, very close to the closest rival in medal tally counting. I think the new generation of Chinese who represent the majority of those very, very valuable audience in China paying attention to Olympic sports, I think their attitude is changing very fast, very different from my generation who have been witnessing the performances of their athletes very idly instead of participating in those sports. And now a whole new generation have been so familiar with what it actually feels by skiing and skating in the real world, besides watching their best athletes to compete. So they do relax a little bit by, they are less obsessed about hoping their athletes to win glory for the nation. They would rather to find their own idol, personal heroes, so that they can follow on after the games. They, with their own life, they can have some models to copy.
Right. Interesting. Dick, the IOC president, also talking when he was meeting there with President Xi. He was talking about, the fact that the games are not just about sports competition; they're a way of bringing the world together in a sense. And he said there is a powerful message from Beijing to the world. Said, quote, we can only go faster, we can only aim higher, we can only become stronger if we stand together in solidarity. An important message. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, it's certainly one of the main features of the Olympic Games, and it's every 4 years, whether it's summer or winter, you get up to 206 different countries with different traditions and everything who come together, who live in the Olympic Village together, who train together, compete together, all with no discrimination and so forth. It's a really, really powerful message, and it's important that message get out there, even in times when there's a lot of tension between countries and the political world. But this is special, and it's doesn't compare with anything else. So I think it's a great thing to go ahead with.
Yeah, you talked about the tensions. Of course, the United States trying to lead a diplomatic boycott. Chinese State Councilor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi spoke by phone with U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken about that, complaining about U.S. interference in the Olympics. But sport can be used as a bridge to kind of bring different sides, the ideological divides, bring people together, holding conversations in a way that you really don't find anywhere else, right?
Absolutely. I mean, this is dating myself a little bit, but when I was in the Olympics in 1960 in Rome, it was at the nadir of the Cold War, and we had these two-dimensional media presentations of the Soviet Union as this monolithic thing. And I saw the Russians, they were just as nervous as we were. And instead of becoming symbols, they became individuals. And that sort of broadened my perception of the world, even as a teenager back then. And I think the same thing happens now, perhaps a little more effectively because of the improvements in communications.
Yeah, Justin, I think about that too when I watch the Olympics. You know, you obviously root for your country. I mean, there is a nationalistic piece to this, but then you can watch these competitions where there are people from other countries and suddenly you buy into their stories, you get so excited and you root them on. You know, what's interesting about the Olympics, and Paul kind of alluded to this is going to be a different Olympics in the sense that it draws people from around the world to come and watch the competition. There is a tourism element to this. And of course, with COVID, that's gone. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's disappointing, I'm sure, for everyone. But if you're going to have an event like the Olympic Games in these difficult times, objective number one is to keep everybody safe and healthy. And so the closed loop system is something of an improvement over what the Chinese observed in Tokyo last summer. It'll be that much more effective, and it will, frankly, your risk as an Olympic athlete is between now and getting into the Olympic Village.
Yep.
You know, the travel and all that sort of stuff. If you arrive in Beijing in that loop healthy, you'll stay healthy.
Yeah, Justin, talk to me about your experience so far.
Well,
well, I mean, you're talking about tourism. You know, unfortunately, if you're to come up with one positive byproduct of COVID, domestic tourism in China is off the charts. The ski resorts and you know, any kind of sport tourism destination around the country is having a banner year because people have bought into the hype and the enthusiasm of what the Olympics is bringing. So they're getting out and they're skiing. The ski resorts, you know, on a Wednesday in the middle of January are full, whereas in previous years that, you know, it would just be on the weekends. So, you know, people are getting out, they're getting about. You know, I was in with some friends in a restaurant last night. The TVs in the restaurant are all showing, you know, Olympic coverage. You know, people are excited, they're enthusiastic, they're watching, they're learning, and it's generating a whole new level of participation, which is what President Xi was intending these Olympics to do. So, you know, I think if there was an achievement coming out of this, which was to get more people active and traveling and healthy and enjoying their life, it's been 100% successful so far.
Yeah, Paul, talk about the closed loop system because this is a pretty stringent one. They've got a plan in place. Can you kind of outline it for us?
Mike, myself being outside of the closed loop or the bubble, I'm trying to use my imagination, although I have read all the playbooks very, very carefully, but I understand that the closed loop was not adopted by China only or the organizing committee of the Beijing Games, but jointly with the IOC. Actually, this whole new idea started from Tokyo instead of Beijing. And I think the Beijing playbooks and all the countermeasures against COVID have been built over the past year or many, many months, and starting from Tokyo. And, you know, it's a whole system, and it's a continuation with the Tokyo practices. And I understand that now the IOC has decided to relax a little bit about what's required for athletes when they, you know, receive the medals at the awarding ceremony. That they can, you know, take off their masks now. I think the attitude that I can read based on the, you know, seeing the most recent press conferences given by Bocock is adaptability and flexibility, that you can adapt yourself more freely to the ever-changing situations. And yeah, I understand that at least from the host side, almost all those Chinese staff now staying inside the loop, the closed loop, they have been, you know, stationed there, I think days or weeks ahead the arrival of international participants. So they have been in that healthy situation for quite a while. Of course, they are a little vulnerable or susceptible to infection by those people coming into China. But I think there is a backup force, both for the staffers and as well as those volunteers.
Right. Dick, you mentioned it. You're a former athlete. You've actually competed in Olympic Games. Give me a sense of what it's like for these athletes a week out. What that anticipation's like, the nervous energy. What's it like as you get so close to the actual events?
Well, you're right. It's nervous energy, but in the case of an Olympic athlete, it's focused nervous. They're used to dealing with that kind of stress, and that's part of the mental preparation. So I would think there's a general level of excitement that it's finally going to happen. The uncertainty about whether the games would even take place has disappeared. So we know there's going to be a show. We know who our competitors are going to be, and we just want to be. One of the great things about the Olympics is if on the day you get it all right, you could be an Olympic champion, and that's what keeps everybody focused on this. And I'm sure they're all looking forward to it.
What would be your message to the athletes who are competing a week out?
That we're delighted you're here. Congratulations on having made it safely. You're at the top of the scale in world competition. We know that you're looking forward to the competitions, and everybody's secret dream, sometimes not so secret, is they want to be an Olympic champion.
Paul, we're running out of time. We've probably got about 40 seconds. If you can briefly, it's supposed to be the greenest games ever. What's China doing to achieve that?
Well, China has done tremendously well in this regard. I have to say that apart from all the technologies, cutting-edge technologies China has been introducing, but the main purpose, most of those technologies have been applied to make it all those many of those 2008 summer games venues convertible to winter games. I think this is not only for the sustainability aspect of the games themselves, but also for future development of winter sports as well as summer sports, because those convertibilities of those venues made happen by technologies will be used by local Chinese for many years on. And this is incredible.
It certainly is. Gentlemen, can't thank you enough. We are very excited. We're a week out. They can't get here soon enough. The opening ceremony should be amazing. So should be the games. And I want to thank all of you for joining us. Really appreciate it. That's going to do it for this edition of The Heat. But the conversation, of course, continues online. Join us on CGTN America's Facebook page to comment on this or any of our shows, or chat with us on Twitter at CGTN America. I'm Mike Walter in Washington, D.C. Have yourself a great weekend, and thanks so much for being with us.